from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora and from me. Today I am on a very tight schedule because I have to leave here and I'm running late and I have to go to the funeral of a dear friend of mine. So without further ado, I am going to plunge right in and I'm going to put my personal feelings to one side and plunge in with the fact that I have news from on high, which might entertain you. The bongo drums have been beating solidly. One set of tunes comes from a William aficionado, and the other comes from Meghan Markle herself. So, sorry, not Meghan Markle herself, Samantha Markle herself. And I'm sorry, I'm in such a rush, I cannot redo anything. Before doing any of that, I need to tell you what information I have been receiving from my private friends and sources because of where Princess Anne's condition is concerned. I know that the palace have instructed the press with some information that can be shared by them and some that they would prefer to just be for what I think they call guidance. Well, of course, they don't share any of that with me because I'm not press, but they don't need to share any of that with me because I have friends. And I have heard from 3 separate, very well-connected and reliable sources that I would imagine that this is pretty comprehensive news now, that Princess Anne was in the field with horses and she was either head abutted by a horse or kicked in the head by a horse and was found with a head injury. She was taken to Southmead Hospital in Bristol. Her husband accompanied her. Her son and daughter were on the Gatcombe Park estate at the same time. So she was surrounded by family. She is being kept in the hospital for observation. She has concussion, and rather like me, I mean, one of my friends said, "Well, you've certainly kicked off the trend for concussion this week, haven't you?" So I think, fingers crossed, she's going to be okay. So we can make light of what's happening. Well, as you might have been able to observe with me and my tripping over words and being generally less sharp in the last week and a bit than I normally am, that Princess Anne is also going to be a lot more hesitant, and because no matter how decisive we Leo girls of a certain age are, once we've had our head bashed, it does mean that there are, fortunately, hopefully not lifelong consequences, but there are temporary consequences. I'm sure there are many people who would say it's a merciful relief that both Princess Anne and I will be a little bit less incisive and decisive than we normally are. But she is evidently being kept in the hospital for observation, because the fact of the matter is, once you have concussion to the extent she does. And of course, she has a rather more serious head injury than I do. That much is obvious to me. Nobody has told me that. Nobody has needed to tell me that. It's as plain as the nose on your own eye face. So she is going to miss the state dinner for the king and queen, the emperor and empress of Japan. I tell you, I'm definitely not firing on all cylinders still. So she will be missing that. And my understanding is that she was due to be going to Canada at the end of the week. And obviously, barring a Lazarusian miracle, there's no way she's going to be going to Canada either. But the word, I won't say on the street, I'll say in certain drawing rooms, is she's going to be okay. She is being well taken care of. They have made her as comfortable as possible. And, you know, I have to say, Tom Sykes got in touch with me from the Daily Beast and made the point that the hymn sheet from which I have been singing for the last 30 years is proving to be very accurate, because the slimmed down monarchy is all of a sudden looking skeletal, because there is now going to be no Princess Anne for a while. The king is on reduced duties. The Princess of Wales is out of circulation altogether. I only hope that both the king and Prince William are getting the message that it's all very good and well to have a pared down monarchy, but they better be careful that it's not so pared down that people realize that the world will spin without the monarchy. And no matter how badly it spins, as long as it's spinning, some people will say, well, what do we need them for? So I leave everybody with that thought as I now plunge in with, and here goes. Home with Emma says, and this is how I am going to answer the two bongo drums by introducing it with this question. Lady C, when the princes were young, I saw a lot of them being a neighbour to Highgrove, Tetbury. I can tell you now that Harry was already a pain in the posterior, spelt with an A. Poor Prince William showed us so much patience and care to the overindulged, by Diana, brat. Well, I know from friends of mine whose children and grandchildren were at school with Harry that he was extremely unpopular at school. He threw his weight around. He expected everybody to kowtow to him. He could be fun. He could be entertaining, but he was a right royal pain. And maybe that's where the expression right royal pain comes from. Because maybe royals, when their pains are bigger pains than everybody else. And William was anything but. And now the bongo drums are telling me that, you know, with the run up to William's birthday and the fact that there was all this wonderful coverage, you know, with that photograph that Catherine took on the dunes at Norfolk, and of William and the three children, and first of all, William is, may I say, I'm going to be slightly garbled, but bear with me. First of all, of course, Harry and Meghan did not wish William a happy birthday, which is not a surprise because as far as William is concerned, I am told, Harry is dead to him. And he is so, he has been through the ringer in such a way that Harry is dead to him. And Catherine also, because you see, they are very aware of the many ways in which Meghan and Harry, being complicit, have tried to destroy them. And I made a few notes, and I'm going to refer to them. William says Harry is dead to him. He's been through a process as a result of Meghan arriving on the scene and destroying the relationship between Harry and William and Catherine. According to this aficionado, the whole process has been extremely convoluted and complicated. At first, William didn't realize that he was threatening the relationship with Harry by raising his concerns about Meghan's unsuitability and Meghan's character, which he didn't actually attack directly. He very gently beat around the bush, saying, "Oh, do you really think you know her well enough? Don't you think you're rushing things a little bit?" Going softly, which, as far as Meghan was concerned, was a real threat to her plans to marry Harry, be in the royal family, exploit the royal family for all it was worth, and do, in fact, what she has done. The fact that she has done it in such a way that she is now an international mockery and failure was not her plan. Her game plan was to actually execute exactly what she has executed, but the objective would have been success. Well, it's turned out not to be. But William evidently addressed the issue with Catherine's approval and encouragement, because Catherine really loved Harry as well. And Catherine evidently saw very early on that Meghan was anathema. Remember, Catherine was bullied. And once you've been bullied, you pick up the vibes of a bully. Even if you don't initially think, this person's a bully, you think, why is this person invading my space? Why is this person behaving inappropriately? Why is this person plugging in as if I'm the national grid and they want my electricity and they want my light and they want my everything? So even before you consciously realize that somebody is a bully, unconsciously you have picked up that they are a bully. And of course, it then emerged that Meghan was a bully, but that's further down the line. But from the very outset, they found her disrespectful, inappropriate, condescending, abrasive, and when her manipulations and when she pressed the people's their buttons, let's stick to them. When she pressed their buttons and didn't get the desired response, it wasn't that their attitudes and that their responses were healthy and normal. It was that they were up their own arse, is what I am told that she said that they were, and that they were stiff and that they were this and very disparaging of them, and that, no wonder Harry had issues, because really he's surrounded by all these stiffs and he needs to loosen up, and so maybe follow the Doria advice and solve the problem. But of course, William and Catherine were not privy to what was always going on, but they got a sense of that things were not as they ought to be for harmony within the family, and for Meghan, should she marry Harry, being included into the family and able to adjust and acquit herself without being abrasive and destructive. Evidently, at first, William didn't realize he was threatening his relationship with Harry because he was relying by raising red flags gently, and he didn't raise them exhaustively, evidently. He raised them gently and did not get the desired response. And of course, Harry then scuttled back to Meghan, and Meghan, seeing there's danger there, set out to destroy the relationship between the brothers and the triumvirate with Catherine. William and Catherine, and she evidently kept pretty much out of it. She let William lead, but she was very much backing him up. And she took a back seat, and that then became that she was cold, because Meghan then said she was cold and she was unfriendly and using and she needed to loosen up. These people need to chill, they're up their own asses. They just need to chill. Be chilled. That was evidently not only her attitude, but her mantra. And they were relying on the fact that Harry and they had trust, that they trusted each other, and that Harry would be, once the cautionary message was gently delivered, that he would cogitate upon it, do something about it by thinking about it, and maybe opening his eyes, instead of which Meghan planted all sorts of poison. My notes say they didn't realize that Meghan was purposely injecting bitterness into the relationship. Instead of, they expected that Harry would think about it, think, well, yeah, maybe I should take it a little bit slower. Let me see. But that did not accord with Meghan's game plan. And Meghan was already in control of the relationship and of his reactions. And she made sure that she then was in control of his actions as well. So when it all started, evidently, William seemed to believe that maybe Harry's irrational reactions were due to him being in therapy. And remember, William and Catherine are the ones who encouraged Harry to enter therapy, not Meghan, as Harry now lies and says. And they actually misattributed Meghan's poison to being over-therapeutised. So that was a big mistake on their part. They didn't realise what was actually going on until really the relationship was beyond redemption. They had no idea because they were not witness to the daily drops of poison that Meghan was dripping into Harry's air. They believed that Harry's therapy was more responsible than it was for the radical shifts in Harry's attitudes and perceptions. So they understood something was going on. They didn't realize, though, that it wasn't therapy, it was Meghan. It took time for them to understand that Meghan was the person behind this radical shift. William and Catherine were also perplexed at how they were being blamed for normal behaviour by Harry and Meghan. They thought that cultural differences were the reasons why there was awkwardness in the relationship. For instance, Meghan showing up to meet William and Catherine, barefooted, torn jeans. I'm so great and grand. I don't need to make any effort. I mean, who do you think you are? Just because you're the heir to the British throne. I mean, I'm not impressed. And I'm showing you I'm not impressed. They didn't realize that this was dominatrix, narcissistic, antisocial, Machiavellian Meghan in full flow. They thought it was cultural differences. Oh, well, she's from California. She doesn't know, but, she'll learn. They didn't realize that she was actually deliberately disrespecting them, because the way to maintain control and domination over Harry was for her to be the ultimate arbiter and authority. And if she should in any way, shape or form bend, which is why Charles ended up calling her tungsten, if she should be at all, if she should ever bend, she would be giving away her power, because she would then be starting to need to start to adjust. Well, otherwise, she didn't need to adjust, and she was purposely determined to not adjust. The great Meghan was going to ride roughshod over everybody, and she was going to, in the process, show Harry what a stiff his brother was and his sister-in-law. Because William and Catherine were really perplexed that perfectly ordinary behavior that they indulged in was being used against them by Meghan and then through Harry back to them. For instance, the fact that when she hugged them, invading their space, because that's what it is. I mean, if a stranger hugs me, I, by and large, am recoiling. In certain situations you don't, but within a personal family context, the arrivist totty from nowhere who comes and wants to hug you is disrespectful, and it is unexpected, and if you recoil, which they did, all of a sudden that's them being uptight and them being cold. So, but they thought it was cultural differences. They did not realize that, in fact, it was Meghan undermining the whole structure of Harry's life, especially his relationship with his brother and sister-in-law. Maliciously is the word that has been used. And I don't think people can argue with that. She would like everybody to believe that she was the victim, she was the perpetrator. But she was clever. She made out that she and Harry were modernizers. And obviously she didn't only do this to Harry, she did this generally. Look at all those old stiffs. We are modernizers. And we're cutting edge. And William and Kate, Lady Katie, and Big Willie. Oh, I wish I was a Cambridge instead of going to be a Sussex. I wish. However, I've got to make sure that everybody knows that I love my age. But we're never going to miss the chance to call him Big Willie. Roasted chicken. That William and Catherine were fuddy-duddies who were stuck in the past. Their stability and their really sterling virtues were being used against them as Meghan encouraged Harry to look at them with scorn, with derision, with resentment, that their point of view was always invalid. They had no right to their feelings. The only person whose point of view was valid was Meghan's, and the only person who had a right to the feelings that were around was Meghan. Their values were being used against them as she encouraged Harry, plainly with the object of destroying his close relationships and liberating him so that she could ultimately move him to California. The idea was part of the year in California, part of the year in the United Kingdom. So they would have been doing occasional royal duties, but mostly based in California. Now, none of this is new, but this is emerging that this was Meghan's game plan from the word go. She disparaged everything about Harry's past and his royal heritage. She invented all sorts of grouses, all based on her feelings and their stodginess, there being William and Catherine. in the early days, evidently, her real targets were William and Catherine. Then she expanded later on to add others into her field of vision. At the time, evidently, William and Catherine they didn't appreciate what was truly going on, because much of this was going on behind their backs. And they had no idea. They had hints, but the extent of it, the enormity of it, the effectiveness of it, and the poisonousness of it all was actually just shooting over their old-fashioned stick-in-the-mud heads, because that's what Meghan had billed them as to Harry and with Harry. She set about creating situations that would trigger adverse reactions from Catherine as well as William. And I'm going to use one that everybody knows about, the lip gloss incident. Now, nobody that I know, and I'm 75 years old, would dream of asking someone else to lend them their lipstick or their lip gloss. And if they did, big if, they would put the lip gloss or lipstick on their finger, then apply it to their mouth. They would not take the lipstick or lip gloss and put it to their mouth. And if they did, you would be rarely surprised, because that is invasive. But Meghan is invasive, and the aficionado is of the opinion that Meghan's invasiveness she is aware of how invasive she is being, and she does it deliberately to undermine and dominate, and at the same time create sufficient fodder and reaction so that she can then play the victim card at the same time. And I'll wrap up with William and Catherine were very measured in their responses from the very outset. They never indicated to Harry or anyone else the full extent of their reservations about Meghan. They didn't particularize them, not even to Harry. Of course, things have changed since then. They, as far as they are concerned, William, as I was told, says Harry is dead to him and Meghan doesn't even exist. And Catherine doesn't want the drama, feels that she has been abused, which she has, feels that her kindness has been abused, her personality has been disrespected, the fact that she's not a cheap slut who's parading herself around the place in the most indecorous manner, hugging and kissing everything that walks, talks, stands or sits, should not be used for her to be characterized as cold, because she's certainly not. She feels she has been tremendously misrepresented, not only in terms of her beliefs, including this nonsense about her being a racist, but in terms of her personality. She feels that Meghan and Harry, as a result of Meghan's instruction, disrespect her personality and her feelings and her rights to possess the feelings, the normal, healthy feelings that she does, in the most astonishing way. And we're not even going to go anywhere about anything else. We're gonna not mention anything about the way they felt that the dress fitting at which we were informed about via Givenchy went. We won't even go there, because that just confirmed that, as far as they were concerned, there could be no relationship between Meghan and Harry with them and their family. And now we get on to the Samantha Markle bongo drums, because Samantha has been in touch with me, and her lawyer, who is very capable, if I remember correctly, his name is Peter Picton, but it might be David Picton, and I'm sorry, I'm under such pressure time-wise that I cannot even check the name. But hopefully by the time this is aired, you will have heard that Meghan is in the line of fire again, because Mr. Picton is issuing proceedings, the appeal in terms of Judge Honeywell's strikeout, because Judge Honeywell, well, let me say what Samantha has said. She said that I'm going to use my words instead of hers, because I need to be careful that anything that I have got wrong rebounds on me and not on her. So just in case, I will say that the Honeywell decision was always somewhat unsound, but it was based in part upon the fact that the original matter was not filed as it ought to have been by the previous lawyers. And there are significant issues that were ignored by Judge Honeywell that are being put back into the pleadings, or put into the pleadings might be a better way of putting it. And this will result in Meghan being back in the frame for defamation, because there is no way that Meghan did not set out to not only defame her sister, but to destroy her reputation and her ability to earn a living. Samantha tells me also that amid scabies, that itch, that little itch, and rather like his alter ego, H with a B in front of it, has been evidently and if this is inaccurate, I will immediately withdraw, but I gather it's accurate, that he has been posting rumours to the effect that Samantha was on a non-existent list as somebody who was troubling. I don't even want to use the names of the supposed list. And why this would revive again can only be because Meghan knows that the appeal is about to be issued, because obviously her lawyers will have been instructed by Samantha's lawyers that this is in the offing. And amid Scabies is saying that Samantha was on some deranged persons list, or I forget even what the name of the list doesn't exist. I have written about this in my book, the updated version, Meghan and Harry, the real story, persecutors or victims. And if it turns out that he has really said it, which it does, I would not be surprised if Samantha and Mr. Picton go after him for defamation as well, because he cannot be saying that she is on a list of people with Scotland Yard who are hassling Meghan and Harry and the royals when the list doesn't exist, and they all know the list doesn't exist. And this is yet another attempt by them to disparage and really destroy Meghan, with, amid Scabies, destroying Samantha's reputation and rendering her incredible, when in fact it's Meghan and amid Scabies who should never be trusted, because, well, I mean, you only need to look at them to see that they are studies in artifice. Let's not even go with what comes out of their mouth. Let's just go with their faces as they are, because two greatest studies in plasticity I have never seen. Carol Fuller says, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Raine Spencer, Charles Spencer's stepmother, selling off the family assets when Diana first came on the scene? In my opinion, Charles has a lot to be grateful to the royal family for. Besides that, without Diana's marriage, we would probably never have heard of him. Well, you certainly wouldn't have heard of him, my dear, generally speaking, because, you know, I mean, the days of the aristocracy being cannon fodder for the gossip columns and the media are long since over. Very few members of the aristocracy are now regarded as mainstream media attention worthy. Charles Spencer would not have been one of them. He would certainly have been writing the books he's writing because he is a fine historian. He would have a far lower profile than he does. He would have had to be really earning the regard of the public the way any other titled person in popular professions now has to earn the regard of the media. I speak from experience. I'm one of them. It doesn't drop in your lap just because you have a title. That was 50 years ago. Nowadays, if you don't have the ability, you don't get the chance. Now, had when Diana married Prince Charles, the Spencer family was in serious financial trouble. Althorp had been severely run down, and they didn't have the money to restore it. I know what was going on because one of the people at Partridge's, his name was Clifford Henderson. I met him through Margaret Argyle. And Clifford and I lived in the Cundy Street flats together. And for many years, we were actually very chummy. He even used to allow me to use his car parking space when he wasn't there. And because I didn't at that point have a car parking space in the Cundy Street flats. And he was the person who used to handle selling Raine Spencer's and Johnnie Spencer's stuff via Partridge's, piecemeal, getting far less for the items than if they had had a massive sale at Christie's or Sotheby's. But Johnnie and Raine didn't want the world to know that they were in financial difficulties. Charles Spencer and Diana herself used to complain bitterly that Raine had been selling off the family treasures piecemeal. Well, somebody needed to make some money for various repairs to be done and upgrades to be done. And Raine did them. Now, some of Raine's taste was very showy. But, for instance, when she was regilding, gold leaf is very bright for the first 50 years. You don't regild and dampen down the gold leaf artificially. Time will do it. So some of their criticisms were unwarranted. And of course, when Charles Spencer succeeded to the title, he then realized to what extent his father and Raine had been challenged. But he was lucky because gratis Diana's marriage to Prince Charles, that upped the Spencer's profile, that made Althorp a far more desirable stately home than it would otherwise have been. Because, remember, I function in the stately home world. I know the difficulties of not only keeping a roof over one's head, but bringing in income. This is what many of my friends and I struggle with on a daily basis. And these houses are very greedy monsters. But Charles Spencer had a huge advantage, as did his father once Diana married Prince Charles. The royal connection. Then Charles Spencer had another huge advantage, because Diana died very tragically, and they made sure, they being the Spencer family, that she was buried in a very noteworthy spot on the Althorp Estate. That's not accidental. That is good business thinking. And don't think it's anything else, because it's not. Also, he went even further. He created a whole section of attractions built totally around Diana. Diana's dresses, Diana's this, Diana's that, to bring in the punters. If Charles Spencer has not modified his views with regards to his stepmother's efforts, and say what you will about Raine, she was very astute financially, and she was a hard worker. She poured her heart and soul and energy into restoring Althorp and making it a viable enterprise for successive generations, notwithstanding the fact that not one of her 4 children would benefit from it. And of the 4 stepchildren, chief of whom would benefit from it was going to be Charles. He was poisonous to her throughout, and he and Diana bundled her clothes into black garbage bin bags and threw them out, showing supreme disrespect for her. And let's remember, Diana had pushed her down the stairs as well. But that's something else again. But at least Diana kissed and made up with Raine when it suited Diana to join forces with the very capable Raine against her own family. Because don't think she joined forces with Raine for any other reason. The primary reason why she joined forces with Raine was because Raine knew how to handle Diana's family. And Raine was a very decent woman in many ways. She was certainly no great shakes as a mother, but she had many virtues, and she was a very, very effective fighter. One could say almost a street fighter. And that's why Diana linked up with her, because Diana wasn't speaking to her mother. Diana was estranged from her family, and she knew that she could use Raine to tell her how to handle her family better. Phil Sherburn says, Charles Spencer just wants attention because he's not relevant anymore, just a joke. Well, I mean, he is, in fairness to him, he is a very good historian. He is a writer. A writer has the right to use his or her experiences to write books that he or she finds interesting and hopes the public will find interesting. I have my reservations, though, as to why he wrote that book about his school days. But I wouldn't deprive him of the right to have written it, although I certainly would not deprive myself of the right to disrespect his decision to have written it. Let me put it that way. Gail Platt says, we can see where Harry gets it from. Spencer blood, my dear, Spencer blood. I've seen it so many times, even just in the circle of people I know. It's not only characteristics like eye and hair colour that are passed on through the generations. No, it isn't. It's poisonous, nasty vitriol. It's being vengeful and feeling entitled to be vengeful. The two families in the aristocracy that have always been known for their nastiness. And I think in the Argyle family, the cycle has been broken by my late sister-in-law, Iona, and I do not think, fingers crossed, knock on wood, the present Duke or his family or his sister or her family are nasty the way previous generations were. But the Spencers, the nastiness is alive and kicking. And don't take my word for it. Ask Prince William. Because he gets it regularly on the backside from his half Spencer brother. And we are going to end with Margot, who says, Lady C, show us your rendition of Meghan's fit when she saw the picture of Taylor Swift with the Waleses. Also, I would like to know if you find Louis to be like Harry as a child. I hate to say it, but as he cannot seem to avoid showing off and acting out, I fear he's Harry number 2. I know people will say, oh, he's just a little boy, but George and Charlotte have always been much better behaved. I hope they get a handle on him before it's too late. May I say, they do have a handle on him. The analogy is not actually accurate. Harry was always out of control. Harry also had a nasty streak in him. Louis does not have a nasty streak in him, and it is perfectly normal in families for children to divide up the qualities amongst themselves. Some are more outgoing than others, some are more mischievous than others. Louis is on the well-behaved, acceptable side of mischievousness. Let's leave it at that. Now, you want my rendition of Meghan's fit when she... H! Get your ass here! Look at this! H! Look at this! Look at what you've caused! Look at this! It's thanks to you that... Look at this! There's your rotten brother and his creepy kids! Stealing my attention! Stealing my attention! I can't believe it. And to think I gave up so much for you and to marry you. And I mean, how could all of this be happening to me? I just can't believe it. I mean, it's just awful. Awful to think I gave up all that I gave up to marry into your rotten family. And look at this. And after all the money we've spent on sunshine sacks and now these jerks William Morris endeavour on delivering the goods and that tents around us, I'm just sick to death of him. He's not delivering the way he ought to. They don't acknowledge my genius. No, they don't. Oh. If I married someone else, I wouldn't be having all of this. It's you, H. You failed me yet again. I think I did it slightly over the top. But I think it would have been better if I had modified slightly. But I'm in a rush. I've got to go. And so I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, will you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.